The afternoon sunlight poured over the cracked pavement of Maplewood High's courtyard, casting a warm golden glow across the red brick walls and tall flagpoles swaying gently in the breeze. Students were spilling out of the building in clusters, laughing, shoving each other, their voices carrying across the open space. It was the kind of ordinary day that felt safe and predictable, at least, it should have been. Away from the main crowd, near the side of the building, 3 boys stood in a loose half-circle. Their eyes were fixed on a lone German shepherd standing near the fence. His coat was faded with age, streaked with silver around his muzzle, and one ear had a small tear. There was a faint scar running across his face, the kind you couldn't get from a backyard accident. His name was Duke. The first rock rolled harmlessly near his paws. The second hit against his side with a dull thump. The third, thrown with more force, struck his ribs. Duke didn't move. He didn't whimper. His amber eyes locked on the boys with a calm that was almost unsettling. Inside that gaze was the stillness of someone, or something, that had seen far worse than this. The boys at Tyler, Ryan, and the new kid Jake had no idea they were looking into the eyes of a decorated war hero. Tyler, the ringleader, had that smug look of someone who thought the world owed him its attention. Ryan, taller but quieter, followed along because he liked the approval. Jake stood at the edge, shifting uncomfortably, watching the dog and wondering why he wasn't running away. He had seen scared dogs before. This wasn't fear. It was something else, something controlled, trained. Duke stood rooted in place, the muscles in his legs coiled but his stance steady. Around them, a few students noticed and whispered. Some laughed. None of them knew that the calm, battered dog had once run through battlefields, faced down explosions, and pulled soldiers to safety under gunfire. To them, he was just the janitor's old mutt. Then a voice rang out from across the yard. Mr. Howard stepped into view, wearing his faded work shirt and patched pants, a broom in one hand and a rag in the other. His white hair glinted in the sun, and his lined face held an expression that could quiet a room without shouting. His eyes went to the boys, sharp and steady, and for a moment they froze. Without raising his voice, he spoke low, firm words that only they could hear. Tyler's smirk faded. The rock in his hand dropped to the ground. The 3 scattered, pretending not to care. Duke's gaze followed them until they disappeared around the corner, then he turned toward Howard, who knelt just enough to rest a weathered hand on the dog's neck. That touch carried decades of shared history. Without a word, they walked back toward the side door, moving in unison, the way they always had. If you believe kindness, second chances, and animal loyalty are worth protecting, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Pawsitive Tales. Stories like Duke's deserve to be remembered. Mr. Howard was as much a part of Maplewood High as the walls themselves. Every morning he arrived before dawn, unlocking doors, sweeping the long corridors, fixing leaky pipes and lockers that refused to shut. Duke followed him everywhere, padding silently at his side. Some students bent down to scratch Duke's ears or say hello, others ignored him completely, and a few whispered about how slow he moved and how rough he looked. Howard never responded to the whispers, and Duke didn't care. But when a locker slammed too hard or a loud bang echoed unexpectedly, Duke's ears would twitch and his body would shift ever so slightly forward, ready to react. Most people thought it was just nerves from old age. They were wrong. After school, Howard and Duke walked home together along a tree-lined street where the roots of old maples pushed up through the sidewalk. Their home was a small single-story house with peeling paint and a leaning fence. Inside, it was simple and clean. In the corner of the living room sat a wooden box. Inside were Duke's military tags, ribbons, and photographs, images of a younger, sharper Duke in a K9 vest, standing beside soldiers, Howard in uniform with dust on his boots, grainy shots of endless desert where every shadow could hide danger. Those memories lived quietly in that box, but in Howard's mind, they were still sharp. Years earlier, under a blazing desert sun, Duke had saved his first life. Howard and his unit had been scanning a dirt road for signs of trouble when Duke froze, his tail stiff, his nose working the ground. The soldiers knew what that meant. Minutes later, they uncovered a buried explosive that would have destroyed their convoy. That night, under a sky scattered with stars, Howard sat beside Duke, feeding him bits of jerky from his own rations. It was the start of a bond forged in danger and trust. Back in the present, the boys didn't stop with that first afternoon. Tyler and Ryan started finding new ways to get a reaction, tossing sticks near Duke, banging trash can lids as he passed. Jake grew quieter, his discomfort growing. One day after class, he walked past the custodial room and saw Howard polishing Duke's collar. The tags clinked softly, catching the light. Jake read the words K9 Unit Valor Award and felt something twist inside. He didn't know exactly what it meant, but he knew it wasn't ordinary. There were more memories, ones Howard didn't talk about. A night patrol through a war-torn village. The distant echo of gunfire. Duke leading the way down narrow alleys, stopping suddenly and growling low. Moments later, two armed men were discovered hiding, ready to attack. Duke lunged when one raised a weapon, buying the soldiers the second they needed to take control. Howard patched a cut on Duke's side that night with one arm bandaged from his own injury. They kept each other alive. Then came the Friday afternoon that changed everything. The fire alarm shrieked through the halls just as the last classes were ending. At first, everyone assumed it was a drill. But the sharp scent of smoke followed, and teachers' voices turned urgent. Students spilled into the courtyard. From the direction of the science wing, orange light flickered in the windows. Amid the confusion, a freshman boy cried out that his little sister was still inside. She was in a special needs class and froze when frightened. Teachers tried to stop him from running in. The firefighters were on the way, but the boy's desperation cut through the noise. Duke's head lifted, ears forward. Without hesitation, he sprang forward toward the open doors. Howard's voice followed, firm and commanding, words from another lifetime. Duke vanished into the smoke. Inside, the air was thick, heat pressing down. He moved quickly, weaving around debris, his instincts guiding him. He found the girl crouched in a corner, eyes squeezed shut, hands over her ears. He pressed his nose against her arm, then gently tugged her sleeve until she looked up. Step by careful step, he led her toward the exit, placing his body between her and falling debris. At one point, part of the ceiling gave way, and Duke pushed her aside just in time. They emerged into the courtyard together. The crowd erupted. The girl's brother ran to her, clinging to both her and Duke. A teacher knelt to help, then noticed the tags hanging from Duke's collar. She lifted them and read aloud, Duke K9 Unit Valor Award. The courtyard fell silent. Whispers started. Phones came out. In that moment, the truth began to spread. By Monday, Duke was no longer the janitor's dog. Students brought treats, handmade cards, and thank you notes. Veterans in the community came to shake Howard's hand. Tyler left a bag of biscuits on Howard's desk without a word. Ryan offered to help carry supplies. Jake knelt in the courtyard to scratch Duke's ears, his respect clear. Local news ran the story. Old photos surfaced, Duke standing tall in uniform, Howard younger but with the same steady eyes. Howard never asked for recognition. Neither did Duke. But their bond, built in war, proven in peace, spoke louder than words. It was a quiet reminder that loyalty and courage don't fade with age, and that sometimes, the heroes we overlook are walking right beside us. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Pawsitive Tales. Your support helps us tell more real stories of loyalty, courage, and second chances. And before you go, tell us in the comments, if you could thank one animal for their loyalty, who would it be?